You know that feeling, right? You get that frantic, late-night email.
Oh, yeah, the servers are down.
Exactly. The servers are down, the deadline is completely blown, and everyone just kind of points at the calendar and says, well, it was a crisis.
Right, like it's some sort of natural disaster.
Yeah. Whenever we talk about a modern office crisis, there is this underlying expectation that it was completely unavoidable. Like an earthquake or, I don't know, a lightning strike.
Completely out of their hands?
Right. It's framed as an external event that just happened to you. But when you step back and really look at the actual architecture of human problem solving, that unpredictable earthquake suddenly starts to look a lot like, well, a maintenance schedule and nobody bothered to read.
It is the absolute definition of a manufactured emergency.
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to grant ourselves this kind of victim status when things go wrong in complex environments.
Yeah.
We absolve ourselves of responsibility because the system just feels too chaotic to control.
And that is exactly what we are dismantling today on this deep dive. We're unpacking a fascinating theoretical framework known as the Diamond Quintessence.
It's such a rich perspective.
It really is. It weaves together deep geographical history, time management theory, and Peter Senge's systems thinking from his book, The Fifth Discipline.
Right.
We are going to explore how the literal weather shaped human behavior over thousands of years, why your modern crises are actually just breakdowns in planning, and, how mastering a conceptual geometry called the red diamond can help you navigate the incredibly complex relational fields of modern life.
We are essentially moving from geographical determinism, which is the reality that the climate of our ancient ancestors dictated how our brains solve problems, to a state of conscious, holistic systems design.
Wow.
It's really about recognizing our deeply ingrained programming and consciously taking the wheel back.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the idea that my modern work habits might just be an ancient relic of the weather is honestly a massive paradigm shift.
It's wild to think about.
Oh, totally wild. So there is a specific premise we are operating from today. It's referred to as the second interlude in the source material, and it lays it out so simply. Quote, whether or not you like it, weather has a say.
Yeah, weather has a say.
The argument is that our most dominant regional archetypes were literally forged by historical climate conditions over millennia.
Exactly. Right. Different climates created vastly different environmental pressures. And those pressures over generations honed very specific ways of interacting with the world.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, if you look at the Far East, their historical environment was defined by tropical rain and heavy, just overwhelming monsoons.
Right. You can't exactly fight a monsoon.
You really can't. You cannot engineer your way out of it when you were living in ancient agrarian societies. So that specific environment drove a cultural focus inward, forging the archetype of personal mastery.
Oh, wow. Because if the external world is that chaotic and unstoppable, the only thing you can truly control is yourself. That makes so much sense. You see this reflected in their cultural expressions, right? Like the precise cultivation of rice paddies, deep meditative practices, yoga, and even the strict internal discipline of the samurai.
Yeah.
It's this entire societal structure built around mastering the internal state just to withstand an overwhelming external environment.
Now, move across the globe and contrast that with the Middle East.
Okay.
There you have extreme heat, harsh desert environments, and a profound lack of water.
A completely different kind of stress.
Exactly. That level of constant draining environmental stress doesn't just require internal discipline. It forces high levels of reflection and adaptation just to survive. So that environment birthed the archetype of innovation.
And the history backs that up beautifully. I mean, to survive the heat and manage scarce water, they had to invent.
Right.
The Archimedean screw, windmills, the crankshaft, even the very concept of the first university to pool collective knowledge.
It's incredible.
It is. But here is the region that really contextualizes modern corporate culture, I think. The West. The archetype of the West was forged by cold, snow, and this incredibly narrow, ruthless 3-month window to plant, grow, and harvest crops.
Yeah, that 3-month window is everything. If you miss that in Northern Europe centuries ago, you freeze or you starve.
Right.
There is no second chance. So that immense environmental pressure created an absolute permanent obsession with urgency. It forged the masters of team learning and violent execution.
Because it requires a collective, coordinated rush against the clock.
Exactly.
There's this quote from General George S. Patton that's highlighted in this framework, and it perfectly sums up the Western archetype. He said, "A good plan, violently executed today, is better than the perfect plan next week."
That is the ultimate Western mindset.
It's all about urgent collective action. And then, conversely, you have regions in the tropics, between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, where there's very little adverse weather.
Right. They had the luxury of year-round planning. Without a harsh, time-sensitive weather event forcing their hand, those cultures could operate on a totally different rhythm. But unfortunately, in the context of the urgent, hyper-connected modern global stage, that lack of an ancestral panic button actually put those regions at a historical disadvantage when colliding with Western expansion.
So you're saying Mother Nature was essentially the original ruthless project manager?
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But think about your own life right now. Are we really just sitting in our climate-controlled, perfectly comfortable offices, unconsciously acting like we only have 3 months to harvest our crops before the winter kills us?
What's fascinating here is that the answer is yes.
Wait, really?
Yes. We are still running on that ancestral software. The context has completely changed. I mean, we have insulated ourselves from the weather with technology and global supply chains. But the psychological drive remains.
Wow.
That winter is coming. Panic was highly adaptive when you were literally farming in the snow. But when applied to a modern corporate setting, that same unchecked urgency creates a state of perpetual, unnecessary chaos.
Okay, so if the frost isn't coming for our spreadsheets, why are we constantly operating in a state of emergency? I mean, this brings us to the whole concept of the crisis.
Right, the dreaded crisis.
We're all familiar with Stephen Covey's matrix of activities, right? Dividing our tasks by urgency and importance into quadrants like home or play, the treadmill of busy work, standard work, and of course, the crisis quadrant.
Most people view that crisis quadrant, tasks that are both highly urgent and highly important as a bucket for unavoidable lightning strikes.
Things you just couldn't see coming.
Exactly. But the framework we're discussing today explicitly redefines this. A true crisis is incredibly rare.
Really?
Yes. What we usually categorize as a crisis almost always arises from a breakdown in planning, a lack of maintenance, and just a fundamental failure of anticipation.
Let's look at the concrete example from the notes about that small alluvial mining operation.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, this mine was absolutely addicted to crisis management. They experienced constant mechanical breakdowns, they were ordering spare parts incredibly late, and massive machines were constantly grinding to a halt.
Total chaos.
Their overall production, their run of mine, or ROM, as they call it, was sitting at a dismal 69%. The workers were constantly stressed, just running around, putting out fires, and taking all that anxiety home to their families.
And they likely felt very busy, very important, and very much the victims of bad luck and faulty equipment.
Well, for sure.
But when you apply systems thinking to that mind, the reality shifts entirely. An intervention basically coordinated the interaction between logistics, stores, production, and the maintenance department. These departments were completely operating in silos.
Right, they weren't talking to each other at all. Production would push a machine until it broke, maintenance would suddenly need a part, stores wouldn't have it, and logistics would have to rush order it at a huge premium.
Precisely. By simply factoring in the lead times for ordering spare parts and, establishing clear lines of communication between those four nodes, the parts arrived before the machines actually broke down.
For scheduled maintenance.
Exactly.
And the crises completely vanished. Production shot up from 69% to 95%. The stress just evaporated. I mean, it's like treating a flat tire as an unpredictable traumatic crisis when, in reality, you just ignored the low tire pressure light on your dashboard for an entire month.
That's spot on.
We are completely manufacturing our own weather.
We manufacture the storm, and then we complain about the rain.
Yeah.
But once you realize that the crisis is manufactured by a breakdown in planning, you also realize you have the power to dismantle it.
Right.
If we're manufacturing our own weather, it means geography is no longer our determinant.
So we aren't bound by the monsoon or the snowstorm anymore because technology, global trade, AI, they've expanded our physical environment into this boundless context. But if the old geographical archetypes don't work in isolation anymore, like if violent Western execution just causes burnout and internal Far East mastery just ignores the external market, what framework replaces it? How do we build a better climate?
Well, we need a new structural geometry. Because we are no longer geographically isolated, We must synthesize all of these ancestral archetypes into one holistic system.
Okay, this is where the framework maps Peter Senge's 5 disciplines onto the geometry of the red diamond, right? To break us out of linear, isolated thinking.
Exactly. So think of a 3D diamond shape, like 2 pyramids stacked base to base. The nodes of this diamond represent different functional forces in our lives or organizations.
Okay, so at the very top point of the diamond, we have personal mastery. That's the Far East archetype. It's your why, your internal character, your self-discipline, and your ethical grounding.
Right. And directly opposite that, at the bottom point of the diamond, is team learning.
The Western archetype.
Yes, that is action on the field. It's the messy, practical reality of executing tasks with other people where, as Senge points out, a team of brilliant individuals can suddenly have the collective IQ of a toddler if their group dynamics aren't managed correctly.
I think we've all been in a meeting like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Then on the left point of the diamond, you have mental models. These are our deeply ingrained assumptions, our cultural baggage, our historical way of doing things.
And directly opposite that, on the right point, is shared vision and shared mission.
Okay.
That's the strategic planning phase, the bridge to the future, the goal we're actually trying to reach.
By placing these disciplines on opposite points of a 3-dimensional diamond, the model illustrates that these aren't just items on a corporate checklist. They are a structural interacting system.
Exactly.
But wait, let me challenge the mechanics of that for a second. If you have deep, quiet, internal personal mastery at the top and chaotic, urgent team learning at the bottom, don't they just constantly butt heads?
It seems like they would, yeah.
Right. And if you have ingrained mental models pulling left and a lofty shared vision pulling right, how does this diamond structure stop them from just being an endless destructive tug-of-war?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes down to the theory of opposites. In a 3D interconnected system, opposites do not cancel each other out. They actually create structural integrity. Think of a suspension bridge. The massive steel cables are pulling in completely opposite directions, but that immense tension is exactly what gives the bridge its strength to hold up traffic.
Okay, I get that. But a bridge is static. A business, or human life for that matter, is dynamic. We are constantly moving and adapting. How does that tension actually move us forward instead of just locking us in place?
Because the tension isn't static. It's a constant cyclical negotiation across diverse relational fields.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Sure.
Right.
So our default way of thinking is what is called the star topology. It is entirely linear. We put ourselves in the center, and all our activities, work, family, health, finances, they shoot outward like rays of a star. In a star topology, your work silo never truly communicates with your health silo, which never touches your personal growth.
So when one ray of the star fails, it just collapses on its own, or it drags the entire center down with it.
Yes, exactly. But in the red diamond, everything is connected by lines of communication and relationship. The theory of opposites dictates that the diamond uses opposing forces to create balance.
Give me an example of how that works in practice.
Well, for instance, your shared vision on the right provides a future goal that actively challenges the deeply ingrained assumptions of your mental models on the left. The vision says, we must innovate, while the mental model says we have always done it this way. The tension between them forces a realistic, adaptable strategy.
And the personal mastery at the top provides the ethical grounding and purpose for the team learning at the bottom. Because without personal mastery, team learning just becomes a ruthless, directionless mob.
Yes.
And without team learning, personal mastery is just isolated navel-gazing that achieves absolutely nothing in the real world.
Exactly. When you expand this to the broader fields of human experience, vision balances with context, which creates abundance.
Okay.
And exchange, which represents our economics, our energy transfer, that balances with evolution, which is our adaptability and social change.
Wow.
They regulate each other.
What makes this framework so compelling is that it isn't just for massive corporate shifts or like fixing a multi-million-dollar mining operation.
Oh, not at all.
This interconnected cyclical thinking scales all the way down to the smallest fractal of the human experience. There is a great illustration of this in the notes involving something as mundane as making a cup of morning coffee.
It perfectly illustrates the mechanics of the diamond in everyday life, where a breakdown in nodes creates a microcrisis.
Think about it. To make a cup of coffee, your overall goal, your shared vision requires synchronizing multiple distinct resources and actions within your context. You have to turn on the kettle, get the mug out of the cupboard, measure the coffee, pour the boiling water, add the milk.
Each of those microactivities is an interconnected moment in time that requires balancing resources with execution.
Right.
If your mental model assumes there is milk in the fridge, but you haven't engaged in the exchange of actually buying more, your vision of a perfect cup of coffee hits a wall.
You're stuck.
Yep. If you pour the boiling water before you've secured the mug, your team, learning your execution phase, has completely detached from your planning phase.
The lines of communication break down, and you don't get coffee. You get a huge mess on the counter and a ruined morning. You get a coffee crisis.
Exactly.
Which, as we established with the alluvial mind, is just a breakdown in planning and anticipation.
This raises an important question regarding how we apply this daily. Because once we realize we are operating within this dynamic diamond, how do we ensure it is spinning in the right direction?
Right.
Currently, our global systems often run the cycle in reverse. We start with exchange, specifically economics, and the fear of scarcity. That dictates our politics, which then forces society to evolve and adapt through fear and stress.
It's the 4,000-year-old famine mindset.
Yeah.
We are still reacting to perceived scarcity like we only have 3 months to harvest before the snow falls.
Red Diamond asks us to flip that paradigm. To start at the top with vision and personal mastery. To use exchange not to hoard scarce resources, but to distribute value.
Wow.
To see our physical environment not as a harsh dictator we must survive, but as a context for abundance that we can manage. It is a complete shift from fear-based reaction to conscious creation.
So what does this all mean for you tomorrow morning? It means that whether you are building a tech startup, managing a global supply chain, or literally just trying to make your morning coffee without having a total meltdown, you are navigating this exact same geometry of opposites.
It's unavoidable.
You are taking the archetypes our ancestors learned from the rain and the snow, and you are choosing how to apply them rather than just reacting blindly.
We must synthesize the innovation of the desert, the internal mastery of the monsoon, and the rapid execution of the frost. But we must apply them consciously, balancing them against each other in the context of the modern world.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today on this deep dive. We started by looking at how our ancient ancestors evolved very specific problem-solving archetypes, like the West's intense team learning, or the Far East's personal mastery based entirely on the unforgiving pressures of their local weather.
We then explored how those deeply ingrained survival instincts, when misapplied in a modern climate-controlled world, basically trap us in a cycle of manufactured crises.
Right, we treat simple breakdowns in planning and anticipation as if they were unpredictable acts of nature, completely ignoring the warning lights on our own dashboards.
But because geography is no longer our dictator, we can break free from that ancestral software.
Yes. By adopting the interconnected framework of the Red Diamond, we can balance opposing forces, vision against context, mental models against shared mission, and personal mastery against team learning to navigate the complex web of our modern lives with actual intention.
It is about recognizing the complex systems we're a part of, moving away from isolated silos, and choosing to operate with structural integrity rather than just default panic.
Which leaves me with one final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your week. If our historical mental models and our deepest problem-solving archetypes were forged by the intense physical pressures of literal rain, snow, and desert heat over thousands and thousands of years, what new human archetypes are currently being silently forged by the invisible digital weather we are immersed in today? What kind of minds is the algorithm building for tomorrow?
Now that is a storm worth preparing for.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.